In the darkest hour of King Saul's life, the weight of his separation from God pressed heavily upon him. The Philistines, his fiercest enemies, were massing for war, and the once anointed king, now abandoned by God, found himself enveloped by fear. No prophet, no priest, no dream from the heavens came to offer him guidance. Saul was alone, desperate. There was a time when Saul, in his zeal for God, had purged the land of sorcerers and mediums. Yet now, in his hour of greatest need, he sought that very darkness he once rejected. He would turn not to God, but to the forbidden, a sorcerer at Endor. Disguised under the veil of night, Saul and two servants journeyed to Endor. His heart pounded, not only from the looming battle, but from the dreadful knowledge that he was about to break the laws of God. As they approached the woman's dwelling, the king of Israel, now cloaked as a common man, asked her to call forth a spirit, the spirit of Samuel, the prophet of the Lord. Fear flickered in the woman's eyes. Saul has banned such practices. Do you seek to have me killed? But Saul, hiding his true identity, swore an oath. She would not be harmed. Hesitantly, she began her dark incantations. In the eerie silence, a figure began to rise from the shadows, an old man draped in a robe. The woman gasped, realizing that her visitor was none other than Saul himself. The king, trembling with fear, called out to the spirit, "Samuel, it is I, Saul. I am in great distress. The Philistines are waging war, and God has turned away from me. He answers me no more, neither by prophets nor dreams. I have called on you to tell me what to do." The spirit of Samuel, now appearing before Saul, spoke with the same sternness as in life. "Why do you disturb me? Why do you ask me now, since the Lord has departed from you? He has become your enemy." The words were like stones, crushing what remained of Saul's hope. "The Lord has done what he foretold. Your kingdom has been torn from your hands and given to David. Tomorrow, you and your sons will join me in death. Israel will fall into the hands of the Philistines." Saul's knees buckled under him. The weight of Samuel's final words sent him spiraling into despair. He collapsed to the ground, his strength and spirit utterly broken. As he lay there, trembling and exhausted, the woman, the very medium he had sought, looked upon him with a flicker of pity. Seeing the once mighty king reduced to a shell of his former self, she moved to offer comfort, though it was of a strange kind. She hurriedly prepared a meal, a fatted calf and unleavened bread. This bread, made by a sorcerer's hands, was meant to strengthen him. But it was no holy sustenance. It was bread born out of desperation, false comfort in the darkest hour. Saul, drained and hopeless, accepted the offering. As he lifted the bread to his mouth, something ominous hung in the air. This was not the bread of life, not the manna that had once sustained Israel in the wilderness. This was the sorcerer's bread, a shadow of real provision, a hollow echo of nourishment. It could feed his body, but it could not save his soul. In this moment, Saul partook in an unholy communion. The bread represented more than just a meal. It was a symbol of his alliance with darkness. What had once been his clear devotion to God had now given way to a desperate pact with forces he had once condemned. This bread could not offer hope. It could only highlight how far he had fallen from grace. With each bite, Saul's soul seemed to drift further from the light. It was a meal that echoed judgment, a final gesture marking the end of his disobedient path. The bread, made in the hands of a sorcerer, could not change his fate. It was nothing more than a fleeting satisfaction, a temporary reprieve in a night already thick with death. In Saul's hands, the bread was as empty as the promises of the world, feeding the body while the soul starved. He rose from the table, but there was no restoration in him. The bread had done nothing to reverse the inevitable. The man who had once known the voice of God was now consigned to silence, guided only by the whispers of darkness. Tomorrow, he would face his doom. As Saul and his servants left Endor, the dawn of battle awaited him. The Philistines would crush Israel, and just as Samuel had foretold, Saul and his sons would fall. The king had eaten his final meal, a sorcerer's bread, empty and lifeless, before stepping into the abyss. The lesson was clear. There is no life, no salvation, in the false comforts the world offers. Only the true bread of life can sustain the soul. For Saul, who had abandoned that truth, All that was left was darkness and the cold embrace of judgment. Saul sought comfort in the wrong place and paid the ultimate price. What are you seeking? Choose wisely before time runs out.